Hi everyone. I'm Isabel from the Australian Museum, and I'm here to talk to you today about the power of partnerships in my experience through working on Australia's island snails. So I've been lucky enough over the last 5 to 10 years to have worked on projects on Lord Howe Island, which is here, and Norfolk Island, both of which have really high diversity and endemicity of land snails. So they're Australia's highest diversity of land snails per square kilometre on these two islands. And that's just a few of the species. There's around 60 endemic species on each island. And so like other snails on oceanic islands worldwide, you could say that they're the world's most endangered group. There are more extinctions of land snails on islands than there are mammal extinctions, bird extinctions, reptile extinctions. So they're very highly endangered group, mostly due to the introduction of predators. And so our oceanic islands in Australia are no exception. Due to the introduction of rats, we've had quite a lot of species extinctions, and also several species on each island listed as threatened due to predation by rats. There are also other challenges. So there's been a lot of historical clearing on Norfolk Island, so a lot of habitat lost. But on the other hand, for Lord Howe Island, several years ago, they did an island-wide rodent eradication. So that's really good news, and that's made a significant difference. So I'd like to talk about our projects on both islands and how they've been assisted enormously by the power of partnerships. So we first started working with the Lord Howe Island Board in 2016 when they asked my colleague and I to come and do some surveys to inform the planning for the rodent eradication. And from the very start, we've had community members also involved in the surveys and things, which has been fantastic. We started working with Saving Our Species in 2018, working specifically to increase our knowledge of the threatened species and to monitor them through the rodent eradication to see what impact that would have. So it's been a really fantastic partnership. We've had funding from Saving Our Species and also support from the Lord Howe Island Board, and we've been able to carry out long-term surveys, including occupancy modelling, population genetic studies more recently, mark recapture studies, and also we're just coming up to trials of artificial habitat. And so the benefits of being able to work in partnership in this way, one of the big benefits actually has been increased visibility and understanding of land snails. So when we're working with snails, we're working with small, nocturnal, cryptic creatures that generally don't have a very high profile, perhaps. So we've been able to, increase the profile of the plight, I suppose, of these very vulnerable species. In the groups that we're working with, I was actually really pleased to see on one of Fiona's slides yesterday in her page with the good news stories, one of our Lord Howe snails was up there. So increasing the visibility of snails, not just within government, but also for the land managers as well, who are real champions now of the snails, and also within the community on Lord Howe Island. Also working closely in partnership like this means that data from the work that we're doing can be quickly translated into management actions. And again, working closely with SOS means that our increased understanding of the species distribution and the genetic diversity can inform changes to listing as well. It's also given us a real opportunity for more long-term projects. There's been a lot of talk about short funding cycles, and so rather than being locked into 2 years or 3 years, we've been able to devote the time that's required. So we're looking for the impact of change on these land snails post-rodent eradication, but we're not going to be able to see that in just a year or two. It needs to be long-term monitoring to really find out what's happening there. And I should just say that we have seen for the threatened species, which are generally the largest species that were most impacted by rat predation, we've seen a really nice increase in abundance and broadening distribution since the rodent eradication. On Norfolk Island, we've been doing surveys since 2020, and initially our first surveys started as part of a taxonomic revision of the land snails of Lord Howe and Norfolk Island. And just before we went out to the island for the first time, we were contacted by a local who'd found an unusual big shell that he hadn't seen before. And to our absolute amazement and delight, it was a species listed as extinct on the IUCN red list. So we were so excited, and we asked him to take us out to that little valley when we got there. And this photograph is the day that we discovered that it, saw with our own eyes that it wasn't actually extinct. But from the outcomes of that first survey, we realised that there were two species, this one and another one of the listed species, that were only present each in a single population in a very limited area. And we felt that they were at quite high risk of imminent extinction. So we set about forming a collaboration with the land managers for the two snail species, that's the Norfolk Island National Park and Norfolk Island Regional Council, and also approached Taronga Zoo about setting up an insurance population. And that was the beginning of what's gone on to be a really big and rich partnership. So we did establish an ex situ population for those two species at Taronga, and we also set about undertaking some in situ measures to protect the wild populations in the meantime. So this was through a series of small grants to support both the ex situ population at Taronga and also the in situ measures on the island. And so over the years since then, we've expanded our group of partners, expanded to include Western Sydney University, working with Kate Umbers on an ARC linkage grant that supports the next few years of the project. And we've also had another one of Norfolk Island's land managers come on board, the Department of Infrastructure, as well as a consulting company, Senversa. So we now have this group of 7 partners working together. And I guess I don't really have the time to go into detail, I guess, about some of the things that we're achieving on Norfolk Island, but just to let you know about one of the particularly exciting parts of the project that's happening right now is the culmination of our breeding program at Taronga. So for one of our species, the one that was listed as extinct a few years ago, we have just a month ago flown 600 snails back to Norfolk Island to release in the national park. I was at the ICCB Conservation Conference a couple of weeks ago and watched a lot of people's release videos, and I'm really looking forward to setting up for our snail release video with all the cages being opened and so the snails are currently acclimatising on Norfolk Island because they're very sensitive to stress, so as we've discovered from the time at Taronga, and so we're giving them a little bit of time to adjust to the climate and the new diet and so on, the wild diet, and then we'll be releasing them at the end of this month. So that's something that we really couldn't have done without the very varied expertise that we've had from the different project partners. So working with, starting with those of us from the Australian Museum who had a lot of expertise in land snails and the taxonomy and the phylogenetics, but then adding the husbandry expertise from Taronga and sort of more research expertise and students coming on board from Western Sydney University, and then of course the land managers who have all that really in-depth knowledge of what's happening on the ground and the predators and the issues, and also connection to the communities. It's been very powerful. So some of the ways in which this has really been a huge benefit to our project is that the increased survey effort and the increased knowledge of the land snails has led the land managers to discover additional populations of our threatened species, which is very exciting, and we've also actually had our 2 PhD students together find another new population when they were out there on their most recent trip as well. And again, like on Lord Howe Island, we have increased interest and visibility and understanding of the importance of the land snails and the vulnerability as well. And not just among the people that we're working directly with, but in the community as well. And again, working as closely together as we are, the research findings can directly inform what's happening on the ground. I also wanted to talk a little bit about island communities, because essentially we're also working in partnership with the people of the islands as well. And they have a very strong sense of connection to the endemic species. And so it's been very key for us all the way through to be in very close communication, not just with our project partners, but also with the communities whose species we're working with, and particularly in the case of Norfolk Island, where we've actually taken some of the snails and brought them away elsewhere, to Taronga here, to be in constant communication about what's happening with this population, and not just the good news. It was difficult at the start to get the populations well established, and we had some mortality, and we really made sure that we were also communicating the bad news or the challenges to the community as well, because we didn't want to shut them out of the conversation. So we have been engaging through public talks, through talks on local radio when we're out on island, visits to the school, but also through articles in the local paper, even when we're not actually there. And also our partners on the islands have done a really good job of keeping the lines of communication open there as well. So I think, as some of the other talks have mentioned, it's the development of trust that's been so important in the partnerships with between all our project partners and also with the island communities as well. So I think communication and trust is key. And I also just wanted to mention that it's not just the island communities where we need to keep all of the communication lines open and trust and so on. It's also our island-based partners who sometimes I think can feel a very long way away from the other project partners, here in Australia. And so just really lots of communication and sort of acknowledgement that they're doing the hard yards on the ground, the fact that their species are still there at all after all this time of predation is a testament to the hard work that they've been doing. And also they're the ones who are, also facilitating the most of the communication with community as well, which is really important. So I think that's to sum up. It's been extremely wonderful experience to have the chance to work with so many partners, and has certainly made a huge difference to how much we can achieve in these projects. So I'd like to thank all the partners, without which this work wouldn't happen. Thank you.